for over 20 years, Pete Guest did a huge amount for bat conservation nationally, and the award in his name is all about for outstanding contribution to practical bat conservation, and it goes to volunteers. It's nominated, so people are nominated by their local bat groups in their local area, much as here in Birmingham, the Black Country, but also around the place. And we have 11 nominees this year, and then voting goes out again. Local bat enthusiasts, but anyone can vote and participate.
So who's the nominee for here?
Oh, so the nearest we have for the Midlands would be Denise Foster from Herefordshire.
Okay.
And Denise has also done quite a bit of work for us here in Birmingham, the Black Country as well, with Brumbats.
And so can anyone vote then?
Absolutely, yes. If you go to the Bat Conservation Trust website, which is www.bats.org.uk, or just Google Pete Guest Award, and it'll come up with the page, and you can find the instructions on there, details of all of the excellent nominees and how to vote.
I mean, what would it mean to one of the people, the nominees, to actually win it?
Oh, they're absolutely thrilled to bits. I think people find it a great recognition of all of the work that they do, because most people who are involved in bats in a voluntary capacity do it because of their own passions and because they love bats, which is because they're such amazing animals. So to get recognition from members of the public, from their fellow bat workers, I think just means an awful lot to them. It really does.
I mean, there's a lot of mystery surrounding bats. I mean, what do they eat? What would bats eat?
That's great. So all of our native species eat insects, but around the world they are the most diverse in terms of diet of any mammal. So you've got bats that eat frogs. You've got vampire bats that drink blood. You have fruit bats that, as the name suggests, eat fruit. You even have some species of bat that eat other bats. So they're incredibly diverse in terms of their diets.
I mean, you mentioned their blood and the vampire bat. There's still a lot of fear surrounding. A lot of people are still scared of bats because of the myth, isn't it? There
is. Yeah, there's a lot of myths around bats, that they get caught in your hair, that, you know, there are vampire bats all around, which isn't true. You have to be in Central or South America for vampire bats. They don't get caught in your hair. Sometimes they might fly quite close, but that's usually because we're quite warm-bodied, and we can actually attract insects around us, and what the bats are after is the insects, certainly all of our native ones.
And so you're also a volunteer at Brumbats.
I am.
Can you tell me about that organisation?
Oh, Brumbats is great. So we're the local charity for bats, basically, across Birmingham and the Black Country, and we do a whole range of things. So we've got people involved in bat care, so rescuing grounded bats and injured bats. We've got people involved in all sorts of monitoring projects, so contributing to the National Bat Monitoring Programme. We do an awful lot of education and outreach work, so bat talks and walks, these sorts of things. And we've got a really great project underway at the moment, a long-term project called the Batless, or the Bat Atlas technically, but the Batless project we call it, which is surveying all of the 1 kilometre squares right across Birmingham and the Black Country, and there's just over 200 of them. And it's all volunteers going out with their bat detectors and seeing what bats we can find, so we can better understand the species we've got here.
And so what species do we know of at the moment in the Midlands area?
Well, it's quite exciting. So across the West Midlands, we've got 11 species, and there's 18 species nationally, which is quite impressive. We think we've got one hedgehog, one fox, etc. And we have some bats that most people would encounter. So when people are out and about, they'll see things like the common pipistrelle, which they emerge early. People quite often see them in their gardens, and they're really widespread, even into the centre of cities. We have adorable bats like the brown long-eared, which in fact on the Pete Guest Award, it's the sculpture bat, has very long ears, can hear an insect on a leaf, sometimes called the whispering bat. And we've even got records from the centre of Walsall for brown long-eareds. And we have some rarer species as well, so we have a few records for lesser horseshoe bats, which are some of our rarer species as well. So, and anyone walking along a canal or near a waterway may see Dorbenton's bats, who are like little hovercraft over the surface of the water as they get insects emerging from the water.
And is it true that bats only come out at night, or do they come out in the day?
Yeah, it tends to be so. So all of our species, and worldwide it's true, most bats are nocturnal. Very occasionally you will see bats flying during the day. Maybe their roost has been disturbed. Sometimes in winter it might be that they're moving from one site where they hibernate to another, but typically they're nocturnal. And you can start seeing some bats around dusk, and then other species will emerge a bit later.
I mean, what can people do? Because a lot of people find bats at their house. house. What can people do to help the conservation of bats? For example, if they find them, around their house area?
Yeah, so if people find bats in their homes, they can get advice through the National Bat Helpline, which is 0345 1300 228, again, or just Google National Bat Helpline, and that's a service that the Bat Conservation Trust run. There's also a free advice service for folks in England run by Natural England, and volunteers can come out and give people advice. But there's also loads of things that people can do themselves. There's a thing about the World About Gardens Week this year, which takes place in October, is all themed around bats, and there's great information. So there are all sorts of things, planting, if you've got access to a garden, allotment, or you're involved in a friends of groups, there's plants that benefit the insects that the bats will come in and eat. If you've got space to put in a pond, that's brilliant. One of my colleagues describes it as bed and breakfast. So you've kind of providing the planting for the insects and the water, that's your kind of food, if you like, and then perhaps consider putting up a bat box or something like that. And we've got loads of advice and instructions on our website.